and welcome back to another devlog. This is number 72. So starting off this week here, I was trying to wrap up this optimization on the last level. I I went and fixed up. So on the start of the week, I decided to kind of finalize and finish up this functionality here to actually um, add these exceptions to these cover points. So if we go to the cover lines here, if you look at these cover points, now they have these sort of these cover point detectors. It used to be just a single one, but I made it into a list so it can have multiple detectors to check against. So basically, um, right now you have to specify for a cover point if a detector like a camera um, it can see the enemy, then the enemy's gonna have a checkpoint to see if he's in cover, and if he has a cover point and it has this cover point detector, then it'll basically ignore him in cover. So that's pretty much working now. This week was mostly focused on doing an optimization pass and finishing up the optimization for um, this scene here. I just had this big room to do, so I put most of the work in getting that done, and I think it turned out pretty good. Let's see if I can get this. If you look at the shadow count and the batches. This one's a little higher. It's not running at like 150 order, but it's a little, I have a big budget for shadow casters. As long as the shadow casters is in check and there is some optimization there, it's just not totally crazy like with, 3,000 shadow casters. I'm pretty much happy. So, because this is another big scene where there's really a lot going on. There's a lot of enemies, skin mesh renderers, things like that, and I'm still getting a pretty decent FPS with a room this size and everything else going on. So yeah, like in certain portions, we're going down to like 100, 200. So that's, there's only a couple little spots where it's like, 400, 500, but that's still perfectly acceptable and within range. It's like, as long as I apply the optimization control, I'm satisfied. So basically, did my routine here to get the all the enemies and the optimization pass for this sector, and that pretty much wrapped up this level for what I wanted to do. So this whole scene, this whole scene is now optimized. So, and my efficiency, changing my methodology a little bit for this scene now is yeah, I think yeah, definitely, and definitely in the next scene after this, like it definitely adjusting my methodology, it actually saved me a lot of time. So I wasn't going and because the biggest time was like I would go in and try to uh, adjust the ranges for all the lights and get them, optimized. But then I would go back and forth, and the system would always change around, and I was doing a lot of redundant work. So what I did, I just optimized for each sector as I went, and I didn't make the lights into hybrid. I just did a one pass on light optimization, and then at the very end I went through and baked all the mixed lights for all the sectors, so how they relate to each other, so that if there's lights bleeding over from one sector to another, I could actually make an adjustment for the scene as a whole and do it pretty much do it once instead of over and over again per sector. And that was a much better way to do things, and save me a lot of time overall, and especially in the next scene. So as I get more efficient and I become more, it becomes quicker to actually process these scenes for optimization. So pretty much we got this scene all taken care of. We'll go ahead and move on to the next scene here. So I started off with a fresh new scene just like I've done before, added things, made sure like the light tiles and enemy spawn tiles are all good, getting more efficient at that, knocked that out. I began processing this first sector here, and I got to the part where I was adding enemies, and I wanted to add another enemy, like one more enemy for the level, and I chose this giant character here, so he's a bigger character. And I basically applied my process to adding just a basic character. So he's a melee character, and doing like I usually do, make sure that he can just he can patrol, he can spot, and he can chase and be idle. So very basic functionality, just like all the other ones. Um, I was kind of wanting to do a little bit of a detour because I was making good progress on the optimization. So what I decided to do is, I think it was around Tuesday or such. Um, on Wednesday, yeah, on Wednesday, I I chose to do a little diversion and kind of add this little guy here. This is an interesting case because he's not like the hanging trap where it's kind of a different. So I kind of had to reconsider, and I kind of had to look at my hierarchy again. This kind of enemy falls into like an NPC kind of category. He has certain functionality where it's like, yeah, he can patrol, he can move, not like the hanging trap, but he can't attack, right? He's kind of like an NPC enemy or whatever. He's meant to be like, if you attack him, he'll drop some treasure or whatever, just um, but in order to do this guy, um, I was kind of looking at my structure, and I saw some deficiencies in the actual architecture of my enemy AI structure. And let's see here. I kind of wanted to define, because I was going to do NPC controls anyways for like the prisoners in the cell and for companion AI, and I decided to put a little bit of work into kind of restructuring and branching off like the main AI controller into kind of a different path where it's, you have like an NPC AI controller where he can move and all that, maybe talk or whatever, but he's not really aiming, he's not really shooting, he's not really doing melee attacks. So all that functionality is pretty much absent. So gonna do a bunch of refactoring to kind of lean it down. So I did on Wednesday. I took time to do a lot of restructuring and kind of refactoring of the enemy or the AI controller hierarchy in order to kind of facilitate like a framework where I could actually implement these type of NPC AI controllers, right? Especially if I want to do like a companion follow controller. So that took some doing, but now I'm pretty satisfied for the time being, having some sort of my architecture, my structure for enemy AI and AI in general, like AI characters like NPC, is looking pretty decent. It would well support a lot of variety of different AI AI enemies and AI NPCs. So um, and it took some skill to actually really chop up and restructure, but I was able to do that without too many issues. But that's just where my engineering skill pays off for this game. I'm not really an artist. I'm not really a lot of things, but one thing that I can do in this game is the actual code bit. So that said, that little diversion was nice. I can build on that in the future. But the other thing I did was in this section here, I have this guy, and he's kind of. I had to come up with a solution where he can kind of see through. I already had the see-through ability for like the plastic curtain, but I applied the see-through tag here, which means another thing I realized is if you apply tags to these objects, you have to make exceptions for these objects. You can't bake them because they'll be applied to the baked object, and then it'll lose its tagging ability. So anything that's tagged, special considerations, I have to leave out from the actual bake. But so he can see through these monitors, but I kind of had to apply the same logic for this guy to these cover points here, where it's like I could gone ahead and messed around with the actual. It didn't really matter at the end of the day. I could have adjusted this higher or whatnot, but every time I go in this cover, he'd always see you. So I kind of had to like say, okay, for these cover points, if you're going through here, make sure this enemy specifically is added to these cover points, and if you're in these cover points, he won't spot you. So kind of the same thing I did with the security camera, and that works. My only concern is, you know, other things like if he's attacking and chasing you, what happens if you go into this cover? Will you not be able to see you? But I think that's kind of a minor issue that I haven't really spent time to think about. But it's kind of a far off case. But other than that, on Thursday, I just kind of for the rest of the week, I turned back to actual optimization. Just the rote routine of optimizing this next scene here, um, and just applying production level polish where anything I spotted that needs to be fixed. And I add some more characters here and some turrets here. So basically got done with optimization on this sector, and then I moved on to this sector here, which is much smaller, not really an issue, same thing, same process. Then this sector down here, I was having a little issue. I was still having this issue where I would go into the elevator and the actual the V cam would actually apply like a Y yaw rotation. So I spent some time trying to fix that, and I actually solved it by what you have to do. You have to go for this particular V camera. You have to say disable the actual look at target, I think, and then it will not apply a yaw rotation. The yaw rotation happens when you're going from like a lower elevation to a higher elevation, and vice versa. But if you disable the lookout target for this VCam, it will solve the issue. And I had to go through all the settings and really do a lot of testing to finally figure out what would work, and that was the ticket right there. So other than that, yeah, same process. And then finally onto this big room here. This was a lot more work in general that I had to sort out. I don't think there's anything particular of note to speak about in this room. Really, no challenges or big major issues I had to solve and overcome. There was something with this bridge I had to sort out. Oh, I finally sorted out the stairs issue. Like whenever the enemy AI was chasing me, it was kind of getting caught up on these stairs. They wouldn't know how to like path correctly up the stairs. So what I figured out was I had these like invisible wall things, like pretty much these plain meshes on the edges here to make sure you stop here. You can't just hop up here on the edges, and that should be applied for the enemies as well. But what happens is if you have like one of these plane meshes or any sort of mesh, like a collider, mesh collider, or any sort of collider without a mesh render and a mesh filter, the actual AI navigation will not consider it in the nav mesh baking. So it was not properly cutting out and applying like a cutout for a wall on these stair edges. So the AI was kind of getting confused and like the navigation was like going under the stairs, so it would just get stuck on these edges here. But as soon as I actually can actually maybe show it here. So these are basically just now they have a mesh renderer, and if you take it off, let's see, mesh collider. I guess you can see it through. But anyways, you kind of get the point. It would now successfully cut through, give it a little bit more space, and cleanly cut through the nav mesh. So now they can navigate pretty decently every time up the stairs and whatnot. And the same thing applied here with this bridge to make sure that it's like a clean cut through here and they don't get hung up on the edges and whatnot. So, but yeah, back to the actual last scene, um, last scene of the last sector of the scene. Pretty much the same process. There's a bunch of background items. There's a bigger, but you know, just put all the enemies in there, and yeah, not too much to say about this one. Okay, so the last bit of the week I spent working on just the next scene. So this is the final scene of the level. I did this first sector here. I had to start off like I usually do and add the things that are missing from the actual scene manager, like light tiles and enemy spawn tiles like I usually do. And this was a smaller one, no issues here. Real quick job to optimize this. This half of the this sector here, a little bit more stuff. Got some enemies in here. The big challenge, I think, with this room, I was running into, when I was mesh baking, there's something going on with some of these newer models. For some reason, I would try to do a mesh bake and it would just get stuck. It was like 15, 20 minutes. That's not normal. And I was messing around. I was like, I had to do a hard quit, but I my autosave came in handy because auto recovery didn't work this time. I would have lost a couple hours of work. But so I was restored from autosave, and I was doing a lot of testing. I was trying to figure out why the mesh baker was hanging, and for some reason, some of these models, I made some adjustments, and I was able to narrow down and to a particular model that was taking an exceptionally long time. So doing some adjustments and removing some of these LOD models, it was actually able to, and just giving it a bit more time to complete, was actually able to do the baking um, as usual. So nothing too outstanding for this room. The process continues. I had to make sure this is not static so I can move this up and down, but there's pretty much only a couple more areas here that I have to do. I think I left off in this one. So this one's it's not too big, but this area to optimize this small room and then this small hallway. So I'm thinking like only like one, like less than 1 day to actually uh, get this entire scene optimized, and that will be the last scene of the level. And so that is the optimization pass, and then I can go ahead and make a production build that's optimized for the whole level, and then test that out. That would be a big milestone. That took optimization on this level took a long time to figure out and do, but I went faster as I went. As I progressed through the entire level, got more efficient at it, but only pausing to add additional gameplay functionality as I saw fit. But I don't see any other need for gameplay functionality that I have to do right now, like adding new enemies or whatnot. I'm going to make another gameplay functionality pass for this level eventually and go through and add functionality like, interaction to lift and lower this and a lot of other things. I have a long laundry list, but my goal was to finish up the optimization pass for the level so that I could get these FPS and CPU and Shadowcasters and batches under control, and then test it out in a production build. That was my main goal. So, I've been doing an optimization pass for at least at least a month, but now that I'm pretty good at my optimization methodology, I think I can actually cut that down in the future. But yeah, just the last bit here. Pretty straightforward, and we'll take care of that easy next week. And we'll have to see after I do a production build. I have a whole laundry list of things I've been putting off and adding to the Kanban board as I go along, just so I can get through this optimization. But I think next week I'll be doing the production build and also just just knocking out a bunch of like you know dozens and dozens of a lot of small little issues I put off until now. So that's the schedule for next week, and I think we don't really have much more to talk about for now. So we'll go ahead and sign off. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you later.